Hi, I'm Dick Brennan. We're in wildfire season. It's been hard to ignore this year, with the smoke having a direct effect on air quality in the tri-state area. What you may not realize is the connection between those wildfires and our changing climate. For the next 30 minutes, we're taking you on a journey to see that connection firsthand. Our guide is David Schechter, who recently traveled into the forests of Montana to show us why some wildfires are more intense than before and why some places are not recovering from that devastation. He also discovered solutions that can protect communities and even save lives. Here's David now.
There's four elements, that are precious to the people. The first one is fire. If you play with fire, you'll get hurt, But you always respect the fire.
This country has a fire problem, and it's bad. Across our nation, wildfire is a threat to our health and safety. Most recently, smoke on the East Coast and in the Midwest have made the air dangerous to breathe. And in California, of the 20 most destructive fires in state history, 15 of them have come in the last decade. All of this is making me wonder, how much is climate change driving this problem? And are there solutions that can help us coexist with fire?
I think because climate change means a lot of times it's getting hotter, it's easy to make the connection between climate change and fire. But we need to go deeper and understand really what are the links between these extreme fires that we've been seeing and climate change. So now we are in Montana. We're going to hook up with a scientist from the Forest Service and really understand those connections better.
Every walk in the forest requires a hard hat, I guess.
Let's do it.
Okay. We're going where there are no paths. Where are we?
We're on the Bitterroot National Forest. What else do you want to know?
I guess that's good enough for me.
The guy with the chainsaw is Sean Parks. He's a research ecologist with the United States Forest Service, which studies the science of fire at its lab in Montana. We are hiking up into the woods, looking for trees that have been scarred by fire.
Well, this is one of my favorite trees of all time. From afar, it just looks like, okay, there's one fire. But you can actually go in here and count. You can see.
So you're saying there's more than one fire did this?
Oh yeah, several fires. Fire 1 came along and damaged the tree here. And then it kept growing to seal up the wound, and then fire 2 came and damaged the tree. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13-ish.
So it's been in 13 forest fires.
At least.
And it's still here.
Yeah.
And it's doing great, actually.
Yeah,
it's
that's
huge.
good. Yeah. That's why it's one of my favorites. It's my top 10.
Are we going to see the other 9?
That's going to be a lot more 15-minute walks.
But Sean's telling me it's been a long time since regular fires have swept through here. Starting in the late 1800s, for 100 years, it was our national policy to keep fire out of the forest. That successfully reduced the amount of area burned, but over time, fuels built up on the forest floor, smaller trees and dead trees, and those fuels are driving more intense fire.
Where are we headed now? What are you looking for?
I am looking for old stumps that will have these fire scars that we're going to sample.
Which means it's time for Sean to take that chainsaw he's been lugging up the mountain and put it to good use.
No, I don't want this part of the film.
The poor guy just pulling and pulling, it's not going. I've got full faith in you. I know you'll make this work.
Be great, wouldn't it?
Then we had to get another chainsaw.
Nice thing about this saw is it's lighter and quieter. Oh my God, what's going on here? What the heck? Oh, I know what's going on. Sorry. The brake's on.
Okay, let's try again.
You know, we were looking at the scars from inside, now you can start seeing them from the top. That would indicate that the fires that were burning in this area, in this site, were not hot enough to kill this tree and a lot of the trees around here that we've seen.
Research shows indigenous tribes regularly set lower intensity fires in the forest to keep them healthy. These scars from another tree sample show how it lived through fire every 10 to 30 years. 1784, 1795, 1808, up to 1889, around the time the United States decided to put out every forest fire. It was then 112 years before this tree saw another fire, and that one killed the tree.
So when you get these fires every 10, 15 years, like you see here, that's a lower intensity fire.
Yes.
But when you wait 100 years and then you get a fire, chances are that's going to be high intensity.
Correct. And now the fires that we're seeing are now killing all or most of the trees.
What's the relationship between the extreme fire that we all seem to be experiencing and seeing more and climate change?
There's definitely a relationship between more fire and climate change. Fuels are now drier because of climate change. And when fuels are drier, the fires burn hotter and they're harder to put out as well. The proportion of fire that's burning at high severity is unprecedented in these forest types. That is climate change and also having more fuels on the landscape due to fire exclusion.
Combination of two problems together.
Both. Yeah, it's difficult to partition them. You can't say it's one or the other. It's both. A lot of these forests are no longer set up well to survive that inevitable fire.
It's just dead trees all over the place, either just standing as like a ghost or on the ground as, you know, dead tree trunks. We're about to walk up into some areas here that have been just incredibly, horribly burned and talk about why they're not growing back.
So this whole hillside would have been forested before the fire.
This is Kim Davis, a research ecologist with the U.S. Forest Service. She studies how forests recover or don't recover from today's fires that are burning hotter.
This fire burned in 2000.
That long ago?
Yeah, so it's been a long time.
Wow. She's like, that was 23 years ago. It was so long ago, and it still looks like that.
And we still don't see...
Not much is growing back.
Nothing's really coming back.
Why is this area not coming back?
Where we're standing right now is really far away from any living trees that survived the fire. And so there aren't seeds getting dispersed into this area.
So the trees were just so destroyed that there are no seeds around.
Exactly.
To regenerate.
Yes. And so that's the first reason.
The second, she's telling me, is climate change. They've replanted trees up here. That's what's in those little blue tubes. But in a warmer climate, this spot that gets direct sun is now hotter than it used to be 50 years ago.
Adult trees are less sensitive to climate. So they have really deep roots. They have thick bark. They can handle drier and warmer conditions. And seedlings are really tiny. And as we walk around and look in here, you'll see a lot of them are dead. They can't get to the deeper soil water.
They planted, and it's dead.
And it's dead. That one's dead.
So what do we have here?
It's really hard to tell when it's a dead seedling.
This little seedling here would have done well before the climate was different.
It likely would have been growing, yeah.
This little seedling is the victim of climate change. It was pretty rare to see that direct relationship.
It's pretty clear when you come out in some of these areas that we're definitely seeing changes already due to climate change. And if you look up here, this is where we're gonna go. A little bit of bushwhacking.
Where are we going?
Well, I was thinking right up there.
Why are we going up this way? What are we going to see?
Well, I just wanted to bring you up here to show you, what a forest looks like when it is recovering. after a wildfire. This was the best way to do that.
Okay, good, perfect. Love it.
And just to give you a taste of like what my life is like in the field.
I got skinned on my arm. Chance took a stick in his leg. This was not a good program.
Yeah, there's a lot of steep slopes up here in the Northern Rockies.
I'm finding that to be true. A lot of steep slopes.
Kim's telling me this part of the forest we're walking through also caught fire, but it didn't burn as hot as the first location we went to.
The fire did burn through here. You can see there's char on those trees over there. And it killed some trees, but it left some as well. And so there's lots of trees around to provide seeds. They're also providing some shade that's making it cooler and better for seedlings growing in the understory.
So the little guys can grow up if the big guys are giving them some shade.
Yeah.
So as long as you save this little island, this oasis, it can propagate the rest of the areas.
Yep. Yeah. Anything we can do to keep some of the mature trees on the landscape really helps the forest recover. 4, 5, 6, 7.
And we're counting the little seedlings that are now doing great. Whereas in the other location, there weren't any of them. 51.
52.
Oh, it's doing great down here.
Yeah. 53, 54, 55. Feel pretty confident that this is going to recover.
That was a great bookend to like the disaster scene because it was hopeful, like in the right scenarios, and if everything doesn't get torched, things can come back. So is this hopeful for you, or this is just, it is? Yeah.
Yeah, well, of course, I love seeing baby trees that are growing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to come to sites that have trees coming back.
Across the country, climate change is making fires worse. Research from the science group Climate Central finds in many places along the East Coast, there are now at least 28 days a year with ideal fire conditions. But on the West Coast, the problem is much worse. In parts of Texas, Colorado, and Southern California, there are now at least 56 more days with ideal fire conditions than there were 50 years ago.
Firefighters have their work cut out for them in California.
The blaze has surrounded homes, burned structures, and closed highways.
2 people were killed in the fire.
What's the impact in California? Well, in the last decade, fire has killed 153 people, destroyed nearly 42,000 homes and other buildings, and wiped out entire towns.
So I think one of the things that would be interesting for us to look at is how big data and massive amounts of information are being used to solve this problem of fire.
You know, we need to respond fast using the best of the technology, best of the data.
Dr. Ilke Altenitas is the director of the Wildfire Lab at the University of California, San Diego. Pinpointing a fire from the moment it starts is critical to containing it fast. Ilke is trying to address that challenge across California using big data. In this time lapse from a huge fire in 2017, you can see the fire continues to flare up for more than a month.
If you manage to stop this in the first couple of hours, it's a lot easier to stop.
The first pieces of data she uses come from 911 callers.
That location has a level of accuracy, but it's not as accurate as we'd love that to be.
If a 911 caller says, hey,
Yeah.
I see a fire, we don't know exactly where that was.
Yeah, you know the proximity and where the person is calling from. Right. There's a little bit of lag in between that location that they call from and where the smoke is.
To pinpoint the fire, the next data source are mountaintop cameras.
The environment fire map pulls up all the cameras that see that ignition point.
And these cameras then could triangulate and say, it's pretty much right here.
With that location, a scientist at UC San Diego pulls in data from nearby weather stations to project where the fire is headed and how big it will get.
So you can see air temperature, humidity, fuel moisture, wind, and gusts.
Yeah, and these are measured in real time. Instead of a day like we are in today, let's see, this was a Santa Ana day. Within a matter of hours, it's hitting more population, more housing.
So it could go from 1,081 people to 3,732 people.
And many more homes. The acreage grows quite a bit. So these are every half an hour.
Finally, an aircraft sends back real-time video so scientists can map the perimeter of the fire.
It gives us data about the fire front as the perimeter is growing.
What happened? Why did it just change?
What we've just seen is to change to IR, a different type of sensing that could see through the smoke and gives us a better understanding of where the fire is burning. And once you have that, you can use that as information to see what can happen in the next couple of hours.
Are we moving in a direction, do you think, that fire will be more predictable and more containable and more manageable?
I think this is the most important thing, that the recognition that the wildland fire problem is solvable if we do some things right collaboratively.
Obviously, big, huge fires, out of control fires is a problem, but there's another way to deal with this, and they're doing that here in Montana. They're actually setting fires on purpose to help clean the forest. They call it good fire. David.
Daryl.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
Daryl.
to meet you.
How's it going?
The fire team with the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes is making final preparations to set a prescribed burn, and they've invited us to go along. That's a fire that's set intentionally to remove dried trees and brush, but keep the healthy trees intact. To do that safely and effectively, they need moderate humidity, low temperature, and low wind. That's the sweet spot.
If we do burn Thursday, let's do a briefing here, and then make sure everyone knows where to go, where to set the torches, where to stage the engines.
The burn is in 2 days. In the meantime, we're going to go meet Johnny R. Lee, a tribal elder.
There's 4 elements, that are precious to the people. The first one is fire.
Johnny's showing me a spot that's been treated with a prescribed burn. It cleared debris off the forest floor, and now it lets the sun shine in and allow the camas flower to bloom.
What is this purple flower? Tell me about it.
That's a camas. That's one of the important foods of the people. It's a good energy food.
There's a bulb underneath there at the bottom?
Yeah, it looks like something like that there.
And you just could eat that? You gotta prepare it though, huh?
Well, they have a special preparation for them. Takes a 3-day bake in the ground, underneath the ground.
It's the fire that they had intentionally set in that area that made that little flower grow.
Managing the forest with fire is an ancient tribal ritual set by indigenous people to keep the forest healthy.
Would any of this stuff be here if there hadn't been fire here recently?
No, not really, no. See, this has been nicely done here. So we can see with all the camas that's been blooming here, how it has helped making fires, I don't know why the Indian people are never afraid of it. We're connected with it.
Not great news. We don't have the right conditions for a fire, and so called off.
The sweet spot to set a prescribed fire is small, and they got a little rain yesterday, which means today they can't burn. Daryl Claremont is responsible for managing the fuel load in the forests on the reservation. He's telling me those ideal burn conditions are getting harder and harder to come by.
Was this disappointing for you guys to not be able to burn today?
Yeah, very disappointing. We're used to burning, a couple thousand acres a year, and we probably got this year maybe 300 acres.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Instead of what we had planned, Daryl is now taking me to a location the tribe was able to treat with fire earlier this year, an unhealthy plot of mostly dead, diseased, and flammable trees.
I think so, yeah. It's good. Everything's gonna be fine. Is there a flat surface anywhere in Montana? Show it to me.
We were able to take fire, for the most part, out of the ecosystem, and it's just a tool that has always been there. So me looking at fire It's just trying to put that tool back in.
A prescribed fire solves what problem?
Reduces the fuel loading that's here right now that naturally wouldn't be here.
Naturally, if fire was happening regularly.
Fire was just naturally happening, yeah.
Across the valley, he's showing me this area of dense trees, which to me seems to be what a healthy forest should look like.
You look at that stand over there that's thick, dense, wasn't treated. So underneath that heavy canopy that you can see, there's probably this stuff, just thick understory.
So this has got a lot of fuel in it.
Yeah, that has a lot of fuel in it.
On the other hand, this plot was previously treated by the tribe with a prescribed fire.
Is this what a healthier forest should look like?
Yeah, more open, more natural. If you get a fire in there, it's gonna stay on the floor and then it'll just move through. Might torch out a few trees here and there, but it's not gonna take the whole stand out.
As stark as this looks, you know, I now understand that this is really important for a healthy forest to have this kind of good fire.
There's a national movement to bring back prescribed fires as a way to prevent more forest fires. But after 100 years of fire suppression, the nation's backlog of areas that need this fire is enormous. In California, for example, the state wants to burn 1 million acres a year by 2025, but last year, only 110,000 acres were actually burnt.
You know, we have certain parameters that we've used for years that tell us when it's good to burn and when it's bad to burn. And we used to burn a lot. Past several years, those windows just aren't happening.
Shrinking burn windows are a problem. This study from the International Journal of Wildland Fire found in the southeastern US, for example, that even meeting basic burn criteria as defined today will become increasingly difficult over time because the climate is changing.
And so how does that set you back?
We get further and further behind. And unless we ever get like a really good season to ever catch up, you know, we're always going to be behind.
But the use of prescribed fire is also under major scrutiny after one of them got out of control last year and accidentally led to the largest wildfire in New Mexico state history. Back at Dr. El Tintas's lab in San Diego, she's developing technology to keep prescribed fires predictable and under control. For the first time, she and her colleagues are building highly detailed maps that show things like how much vegetation is in a forest, the height of the tree canopy, how dry it is.
Knowledge of what's there and the local fire environment becomes very important.
Using artificial intelligence, they run a computer model that shows how a prescribed fire will behave in the actual environment before it's even set.
So the idea is you can put these ignition patterns in the modeling together with the most realistic vegetation information. So now,
It's sort of like you can do the burn in the computer.
Yes, and many of them, 900 or thousands of them. So one of those, for instance, how did that fire move through the landscape?
Wow, that is so cool.
What it consumed, what it left behind.
What we got to do now is blend that traditional ecological knowledge that we're getting passed down to us and blend it in with Western science practices.
Tony Nkeshola Jr. is the tribe's director of resource management. In all, this season, his crews only had one burn day.
The past few years, it's been a struggle. You know, to find enough burn opportunities to accomplish what we need to accomplish in the way we want to accomplish it.
Do you worry that with fewer burn days, you will not be able to manage the forest the way you want to?
That's a hard question. I mean, I think we will manage the forest the best we can either way. The way we want to is definitely with fire.
So I think what we've seen is that there's definitely a connection between climate change and extreme fire. But also, it's a very complicated problem. The forests are full of fuel and burning hotter, threatening more and more people every year. New technology and old practices can play a role in addressing these threats, but it took a long time to get here, and it's going to take a long time to make things better. I'm David Schechter, on the dot.